Dark Souls, a game quite important to me, does not have a pause button. For the longest time, back when the series was still niche, there was very rarely a debate or even really conversation about the lack of a pause button. However, it seems with the release of Elden Ring and its newfound popularity, this has been a point of increased contention amongst the community, especially amongst newcomers. And Mr. Tavan Bothell, host of a podcast called Two Penny Games, seems to absolutely think that the game needs a pause button. In fact, he goes so far as to claim Dark Souls is ableist for not featuring one. Today I'll be responding to a clip he posted of his podcast on Instagram, detailing his thoughts on the lack of a pause button and how it is somehow ableist. I'll be showing his full clip that he chose to post on his main account in the context he chose to represent it in. So to keep in mind, this is how he chose to represent himself and his points via this clip. To preface, ableism is described as discrimination against those with disabilities, which is important to note later, considering by definition, the systems in Dark Souls would not be considered ableist as they are not actively discriminating against anyone. Throughout this video, via responding to his points that he makes in his clip, I will be detailing why Dark Souls does not need a pause button and why the game is made better due to a lack of it. And so to begin, here is a portion of his video that he posted.
However, it's still losing points for me for not having a pause button. The game not being able to pause is inherently ableist. There's nothing else to say on that conversation.
Ableist? I'm not sure if I agree, but
Well, I think the game's design as a whole is ableist.
To begin, he starts with the bold claim that the lack of a pause button is inherently ableist. This is immediately disagreeable given its implications that he seems to have not have thought of when saying this. This would imply every single online multiplayer game is ableist, every MMORPG is ableist, and many of the old Final Fantasy games that use the active battle system would be considered ableist, considering they do not allow you to pause in the middle of their fights. Some do, some don't. It's kind of inconsistent. This claim that these systems are ableist are entirely untrue. You see, anyone with a mental or physical disability, depending on what that looks like of course, can play these games to completion. The ability to pause is not necessarily an accessibility feature, especially in the case of Dark Souls. Rather, it is a mechanic that is ultimately a creative choice, one that Dark Souls director Miyazaki chose not to have in his game. More on that later.
If you have any type of disability, temporary, permanent, situational, contextual, any type of disability, you can't play these games.
To offset that, I have seen people with disabilities playing this game, and it makes it even.
Let me reaffirm my statement. You're having a much more difficult time playing these games because of the way it's inherently designed. There are things that the developers could do to make it more palatable for people with disabilities.
He furthers this by making the completely stupid point that Dark Souls' whole design is somehow inherently ableist, and that you, quote, cannot play the game if you are disabled in any way, which aside from being completely untrue, is an inherently ableist statement in and of itself. Who are you, a seemingly well-abled person, to say who can and cannot play this game? You are creating the implication that somehow because Dark Souls is a challenging game, that disabled people cannot overcome that challenge. Other than the pause button, he does not explain any further as to why disabled people can't play Dark Souls, so let me explain to you why disabled people can. Dark Souls is a challenging game, but it is a challenge that everyone, if they apply themselves, can overcome. The inherent mechanics of Dark Souls are designed so that the player can learn from failure. Someone's capability of playing Dark Souls to completion is no different than their inherent capability of playing any video game. To say that someone is incapable of playing this game because they are disabled is to say that they are incapable of playing video games as a whole, which is a horribly ableist thing to say. With or without a pause button, a person's capability to play Dark Souls to completion remains the same no matter their disability. Especially considering failure in Dark Souls in the form of dying is an experience designed so that the player can learn from it and overcome that exact same failure in future attempts. The idea of reattempting a boss or reattempting a level in Dark Souls is an intended feature considering you're supposed to learn from that and progress via your failure. The other men on the podcast correctly point out that there have been many disabled people who have completed the Souls games or have played the Souls games. meaning that the statement that they cannot play it is untrue. This buffoon then walks back on his statement and tries to make the claim that these people had to try harder in order to complete these games. That is hardly a measurable metric to go by. Whether or not someone is going to have to try harder to beat these games comes down to a matter of inherent skill and experience not unique to the Souls games. It is no different than their inherent difficulties playing video games as a whole. It is not unique to Dark Souls just because it is a challenging game. You are inadvertently making the claim that these games have to be dumbed down for disabled individuals, which is a literal insult. Not only that, but as someone who is experienced with these games, any perfectly abled person is going to struggle more than me on any new Souls release due to a simple lack of experience. However much one might struggle is different for everyone, disabled or not. Being disabled does not inherently mean they will struggle playing this game more than anyone else. In fact, they might even be really good at it and soar through the challenging experience of Dark Souls. Just because the game is challenging doesn't mean the developers hate disabled people. He says that there is more the developers could do to make the game more quote-unquote palatable, but never explains what they could actually do because he doesn't actually know what he's talking about. And here's where things get worse. Here is what he describes as a disability that the Souls games need to force a pause button in for.
And I'm not just talking people with hand cramps or pains or physical like that. I'm talking like, I have a baby. I need to be able to put the controller down at any moment to go take care of
this.
That's
not
baby.
ableist,
That's a disability. It's a time
No,
disability.
no.
I wouldn't say it's a disability.
No,
Don't
you guys,
stupid
no, you guys
shit
just need to
like
open up
that.
your you need to open
Time
up.
disability is where you have like narcolepsy. And you can't stay awake.
I'm gonna not react in the way that Tavin reacts here, and I'm gonna say, guys, I'm literally in a universal design and disabilities class right now. I've got an expanded view of what disabilities are. It's not just your physical capabilities to do things or your mental capabilities to do things. It's the things around you as well.
I mean, I get what you're saying. You decided to have a kid. That's you. That's on you. That's all. You can say that about a lot
You
of
don't
things
always
too.
decide to
Like
have a kid.
when you have a kid,
just have
you
a
give
kid
up
sometimes.
way more things than being able to do
It's
things
not
like pause
having a
video
kid
games.
is not always your choice.
It's not. But a lot of the times it is. Overwhelmingly it is. And that's what most people are talking about
I mean,
when they say
fine,
that.
sure, but Connor, a pause button fixes that complaint. And there is zero reasoning. There is zero reasoning. You can be up your ass and purist all you want about this stuff. There is zero reasoning as to why these games cannot have a pause button.
I mean-
I understand that the reason you can't pause is for the online capabilities of these games, which is cool. You can turn the online capabilities off, and I still can't pause the game.
Exactly, yeah.
So
that's my issue.
What is the deal here?
I'm not saying that that's not unreasonable. I am being a purist in that sense. I'm only arguing against what you say is a disability.
I mean, if someone knocks on my door,
Yeah.
I gotta go answer the door.
Yeah.
I can't just leave them hanging out there. And so I'm gonna lose progress in the game because of that. Like,
Yeah.
these are normal human being things.
Yeah.
This is entertainment at the end of the day.
Exactly.
You know? It's ridiculous that this is a thing.
He needs a pause button and claims he has a disability because he has a baby. He calls it a time disability. The other people on the podcast correctly point out how fucking stupid what he's saying is and correctly point out that it's not a disability, in which he claims that they need to totally open up their minds, man, and broaden what you consider a disability, as if having a baby is at all comparable to not having any arms or being literally unable to read. Those things are not at all comparable, especially given, as the other podcasters point out, the baby is his choice to have. He cites some class that he's taken that expands his view in what is and isn't a disability. However, in trying to research this topic, I cannot find anywhere that considers having a baby a quote time disability or anything like that. It simply is not scientifically recognized as a disability. That's simply because it is not a disability, it's a responsibility. Not only that, but it's a responsibility that can be taken care of by another person while you play the game. Someone can take care of that baby so that he can play the game uninterrupted, or better yet, maybe not launch the game in a time-sensitive situation. This whole situation is hardly comparable to missing limbs, chronic pain, or wanting to off yourself 24/7. To make that comparison is incredibly insensitive to other people with actual physical and mental degrading disabilities that may actually get in the way of them completing a video game. But at the same time, I hardly think a pause button would fix that for them compared to the other issues that that they may be experiencing. He claims that the addition of a pause button would fix the complaint that he has. However, he is completely ignorant to the fact that maybe his complaint might be a little stupid and that there's an actual artistic reason to the design of not having a pause button in the game. He then goes on to claim that there is, quote, no reason that these games can't have a pause button, when there quite literally is, and it has nothing to do with difficulty. The reason the games don't have a pause button is simple. It can be broken down into 3 main reasons: immersion, stress, and to make safety in the games truly matter. First off is immersion. When playing Dark Souls, there is nothing in the game that disconnects you from the world once you are in it. The game world does not stop for you. It is constantly active. Even at safe spaces like bonfires, the world is still moving behind you. Nothing stops the world of Dark Souls, and you never truly leave it until you exit the game. It is a very unique artistic choice that immerses the player in a way not commonly seen. Next is the game's stress level, and this is perfectly encapsulated in the game's boss fights. When in a boss fight, there is no safe escape. There is no true exit besides closing the game altogether. As soon as you enter the boss fight, there is only 2 options. Either finish the fight via killing the boss, or dying. The intended effect is a desperate struggle in these boss fights, which is further achieved by an inability to pause as the player is unable to stop fighting the boss without consequences. It's kill or be killed, which further sells the world of Dark Souls to the player, making it feel even more real and immersive, like I said previously. It is not put in there to make the game harder or the boss harder, but it is in there to sell a certain emotion during a boss fight. Next, the lack of a pause button further highlights the importance of bonfires and safety within the game of Dark Souls. Bonfires become infinitely more valuable without a pause button, as they effectively exist as the only pause button in the game, as they are the only spots with guaranteed safety aside from completely clearing an area of all enemies. The lack of a pause button is what further gives bonfires even more value than just a safe space in the world, as it is, technically speaking, your only safe space in the world. Because of this, bonfires are made more than just a safe spot to heal and level up. They are made into effectively a absolutely necessary spot for safety. A great misconception about the lack of a pause button is the online nature of the game, something Tavin here leans into by saying that you can turn it off yet there still is no pausing. While yes, the lack of a pause button works in tandem with online features, it is not the sole reason for its lack of inclusion, as I have highlighted. However, while you can play offline, the intended experience of Dark Souls is online play, given the invasion system and PvP systems in place designed to, yes, further build more tension when traversing areas. The lack of a pause button in the Soul series exists with extreme intention, as Miyazaki is consistent in not including it within his titles. The only game that does is Sekiro, which Miyazaki himself does not consider a Soulsborne title. The lack of a pause button serves its purpose incredibly well, especially in the ways I have highlighted. He claims that this is all entertainment and that it's ridiculous that the game doesn't have a pause button, but what is far more ridiculous is speaking for a group of people in which you are not a part of and claiming that the developers of a game are ableist purely because they have artistic intention behind certain decisions and want their game to be challenging. Even though the lack of a pause button does not further the challenge of the game, it simply adds consequence to not paying attention and to be distracted by outside things. It adds consequence to interruption, sure, but the game is not impossible with interruptions, and it is especially not impossible for disabled people. If a disabled person does not think that they can play Dark Souls, then let them make that decision on their own. You, someone whose only disability is apparently having a kid, cannot make that decision for them, nor claim the game is ableist purely because it does not cater to your lifestyle. Anyway, that is all. Goodbye.